It's 2024 and the MLB season is a solid 2 months in, and let's talk about what players actually respect coin if you're betting on them. If you're unfamiliar with who I am, my name is Ryan. I run rudebets.com. That is a software tool that is designed to use data-driven projection-based models to help sports bettors have a better advantage against the house when placing sports bets. At the end of the day, we know that sports betting and long-term profit is all about finding value in the marketplace, and that is what my site is designed to do. That being said, I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years putting my money on these players, so I think I am very valid in my opinions on these guys. We're not going to go over everybody because this is a very large list of players, but we're going to go over ones that I am confident in, and we're going to talk about it. Starting off with CJ Abrams, he has been a really pleasant surprise for the Washington Nationals this year. I think he's off to a great year. Does he respect the coin, though? I would say more often than not he does. I don't think he's good enough to be in that A-list tier, but he does light up my home run projections leaderboard quite often, and he's been doing really well this year. So CJ Abrams, B tier. Rafael Devers. Now, this guy, A tier. He's been on an absolute tear, especially over the last month when it comes to home runs. Devers has been really solid for me for HRR, for home run projections, and even getting a hit. So I do like Devers. I have him in A tier. Skipping along here, Gunnar Henderson. You know what? Skipping along here, Gunnar Henderson is going to be the next guy we go over. Gunnar Henderson has obviously been dominating from a home run perspective. He is leading the league in home runs this year. He has been in a lot of my home run parlays. That being said, I think Gunnar Henderson goes 0 for 4, 0 for 5 way too often to say that he respects coin. His inconsistency at the plate is too much boom or bust for me to say that he is a true respecter of the coin. But given his number of home runs this year and how many times he has cashed his leg on the home run slip, I will give him B tier, but he's in there too often to say that he's A, or if he's, top respects coin level. Moving along here, we're going to go over to Jarren Duran. Respects coin. I'm not even going to dive into the yapping too much. Jarren Duran respects coin. The guy's on base all the time. He respects total bases. He respects his hit line. He respects HRR. He respects stolen bases. Jarren Duran's a beast when it comes to player prop models. Next up, Juan Soto, A tier. Juan Soto, he's been really good this year. I actually have had him on a lot of total bases and home run slips, and he's been really good for me there. Not quite consistent enough for me to say respects coin yet. I have had him flop on me on home run lottos a lot, but that is a personal problem. I think he respects coin to a decent level. Aaron Judge, recency bias, S tier, respects coin at the highest level. Aaron Judge is on Barry Bonds-esque levels of home runs and OPS right now, although Barry Bonds did it over a 6-year period. Judge has done it over a 1-month period. Aaron Judge, if we're looking at just the month of May, it makes up for anything that he did in April where he was terrible. Aaron Judge right now 100% respects the coin. Next up, Giancarlo Stanton. We're going to put him B tier. He's good for a home run every once in a while, especially if he's going up against a left-handed pitcher. He does definitely tend to respect the coin in that aspect, but for me, I think he's just a bit of a B tier kind of guy when it comes to the overall encompassing player prop marketplace. Next up, we're going to go Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz, once again, B tier. His lines are always so high because he hits leadoff. He's always, generally looking at over 1.5 hits, over 2.5 HRR. He's just not consistent enough at the plate for me this year. Every time I feel like I take him, I feel like it becomes a 50-50 if he's going to actually respect the coin or not on such high lines. I've had amazing times with him where he's cashed some big slips for me, and I've had times where he is the last leg and he just can't get a single hit when he's ulted down. So for me, Yandy's B tier. Next up, we have Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. is an A-tier guy. He's kind of in that territory now where his lines are just so high every day that it's hard to take him in certain slips. But when he does light up the board on my projection model on rudebets.com, I take him, and generally Bobby Witt comes through. So I'm going to give Bobby Witt an A-tier. Next up, we have Luis Robert, eats coin. This guy does absolutely nothing. Same with Eloy Jimenez and almost anybody on the White Sox right now. They just eat coin. These guys are so inconsistent for me. Just terrible. Respects coin to the max, Jose Ramirez. This guy's beasting this year, especially in the month of May. You put him in a home run slip, amazing. You put him in total bases, amazing. You put him in HRR, he comes through. Jose Ramirez is extremely consistent for me this year, and I got to put him at the top tier respects coin. Next up, we have Yordan Alvarez, C tier, almost into the eats coin tier. This guy is so vastly inconsistent. I feel like whenever I take Yordan Alvarez and I need him to just get a single hit, 0 for 4 or he gets pulled in the 8th inning and someone's pinch hitting for him. Yordan is C tier, almost to the bottom eats coin tier. Next up, Jose Altuve. I got to put Jose Altuve in A tier. He's been really good for me this year. I put him in a lot of HRR plays at 1.5, and he does really well there. It's hard to take him on hits, but sometimes you'll get a 0.5 hits line for him, and that's where I really like to take Jose Altuve. He's been really consistent for me in that spot, but if his lines are higher than that, I generally fade him overall. Next up, we have Julio Rodriguez, another guy who's been A tier for me this year. Julio Rodriguez, I don't take him too often, but whenever he does light up the board on the projections list, I take him, and so far he's been really solid for me. I feel like more often than not, he has been respecting the coin, although he cannot be in the top tier list, just given how high his lines have gotten. 2.5 HRR on most nights. Can't really put him up into the S tier component yet. Next up, we have Corey Seager. You know, Corey Seager's a hard one here. When I think about what he does for me, right now he's been amazing for the home run slips. I've been having him cash on home run slips quite frequently at the end of May. But overall, his lines have been pretty high. I got to put him in A tier, especially when we look at the beginning of the month of May. He was really cold. Doesn't respect the coin enough to be considered S tier yet. Adolis Garcia, I got to put him in B tier. He does come through on the home run slips every once in a while when I do take him, but he's too prone to going 0 for 4, 1 for 4, missing out on total bases, missing out on HRR. I just cannot place him any higher than B tier at this moment. Next up, Marcus Semien. Once again, I got to put Marcus Semien in B tier. He has games where he's great and he has games where he's terrible. For a guy at leadoff with how high his lines are on a nightly basis, he's just not respecting the coin enough for me to put him any higher. Ketel Marte, I'm going to put him in A tier, mainly because his April was just so strong for me that I have to put him there. In May, he's been a little bit more shaky. He hasn't been as high on the projections list as he used to be. But in the month of April, Ketel Marte was as solid as they come for HRR for me, and I got to put him in A tier for that reason. Mookie Betts, another guy that I'm going to put in A tier. He's good for a hit. He's good for HRR when you can get him at 1.5. I think Mookie Betts has been a pretty consistent player for me this year when it comes to placing money on him, but not quite strong enough to be in the respects coin realm. And another guy who I got to put up there is going to be Shohei Ohtani. This is mainly due to recency bias. I would say if you're looking at April into mid-May, I probably, if he was on that pace still, I'd put him in the top tier respects coin. But he's been on a really cold streak for about 10 games now, which to me, that's long enough to move him down a tier. I think Shohei will get back into form, and in maybe a couple weeks, he could be in that top tier. But for now, we got to put Shohei in the A tier. So yeah. Moving on, Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman, B tier. This year, I have had a lot higher hopes for Freddie Freeman when I see him on the board and I take money on him. Unfortunately, Freddie Freeman has had too many opportunities for RBIs to cash a 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs line that he just does not come through on. So for me, this year, Freddie Freeman's in the B tier. Next up, Fernando Tatis. I got to put Tatis in the A tier. Usually you can get him for over 0.5 hits. Recently, his line's been about 1.5 hits, but I think whenever I can get Tatis on an over 0.5 hits line, he comes through. He's always been a pretty reliable hitter in that realm, so we got to put him in the A tier. Next up, Jorge Soler. Got to put him in C tier, man. I mean, Soler last year, if there was a left-handed pitcher, you could put him for total bases or a home run, and it was almost a guarantee. This year, Soler has just not done it for me. He's been terrible. Just can't seem to get off the ground. So for that reason, I'm putting him in the C tier because whenever I take him, he does not respect the coin. Next up, Elly De La Cruz. This is a tough one. If we're talking like the last week or so, 10 days, you got to put him in C tier. But I think for the season, I got to put him in B tier. Ellie's been decent, but with his expectations, his lines, you just got to get more out of him. I mean, he has such good matchups so often, but he's been going 0 for 4. He's been striking out a ton. I got to put him in the B tier. You never really know what you're going to get with Elly recently, which is really frustrating. So for me, Elly De La Cruz is a B tier player. Yelich, we're going to put Yelich in A tier. This guy, I know he missed a good amount of the season, about 20-some games in a row that he was out hurt. But when he plays, he's as consistent as they come when I have him on the projections sheet. Whenever I see Yelich at the top of the leaderboards for hits or for hits, runs, and RBIs, he comes through. He just seems to always find a way to come through with a really clutch hit. He's extremely quick, so if he does get on base, there's a good chance they can bring him around. But if there are runners on base, he's been really consistent at driving them in his playing time. Yelich, off to a really good start to the season in the games he's played, and he's been respecting the coin well for me so far this year. The next guy we're going to go with is Rhys Hoskins. When it comes to home runs, I've hit 2 slips that had Rhys Hoskins in it, so I do really think he respects the coin when it comes to a home run ball, and he's on the leaderboard for the home run probability. But overall for the season, if I take him on hits or HRR, he does seem to kind of falter in that realm. He's really just been good when he lights up the home run side of the data projection sheet. So for that reason, I got to put Rhys Hoskins in the B tier. Next up, Ronald Acuna. He is out for the rest of the season, but I do want to throw him in here because I did take him quite often this year, just thinking he would get back into form that he was in last year at some point, and eats coin all day. Acuna, man, I don't know what happened to him this year before the injury, but that man eats coin, and it is just not even close, man. I feel bad that he got hurt and he's out for the rest of the year, but he was eating coin. So for that reason, we got to put him down at the bottom. O'Neal Cruz, another guy that I've taken a lot of action on and not really had too many good results with. So I got to put him in the C spot. O'Neal Cruz has a lot of good matchups for home runs against right-handed pitchers that he just seemingly cannot come through on. Every time I feel like I'm taking O'Neal Cruz for a home run, he goes 0 for 4 that day. So O'Neal Cruz, I got to put him in C because he's just not coming through when the matchups say that he should. And yeah, he just hasn't had that great of a year. He's striking out a lot. He's going 0 for 4 a lot. So O'Neal Cruz, I got to put him in C. Next up, we have Ozzy Albies. I'm going to put Albies in B tier. Right now, especially with Acuna out, his lines have just boosted way too high. But when I do see him at the top of the leaderboard for hits, he's been really consistent for me. But that being said, I feel like you can't really take him anymore. He's at a level where his line is just too high for his production value. So Ozzy Albies, sorry, bud, but you got to go in the B category from now on. Next up, we're going to go with Luis Arraez. Luis Arraez, I got to put him in B tier as well. The guy's a hit machine, don't get me wrong, but his lines are too high. You can't take him on over 1.5 hits every single night or over 2.5 HRR every single night and expect it to hit. The hit rate for that is just too low for me. If you could ult him down to a hit, yeah, he's S tier, respects coin all day, but his lines are too high to be any higher than a B tier, in my opinion, for respecting the coin at this time in his career. Next up, we have Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, I'm putting him in A tier. This might be crazy because, Bryce Harper is not hitting, he's not the best hitter in the world this year when it comes to just getting on base. But every time that Bryce Harper pops up on the home run leaderboard, he's been hitting them out. And every time that I see Bryce Harper pop up on getting over a hit, he's been getting over a hit. So Bryce Harper's been respecting the coin pretty well this year. His numbers aren't high enough to be in the full respects coin category. But for me, Bryce Harper has been a guy that when I take him, I generally see pretty good results more often than not. So for me, Bryce Harper, congrats, bud. You're in the A tier. Next up, we're going to go with Jackson Holliday. He's been called down. This guy is S tier, respects coin. If you took Jackson Holliday like I did on under a hit or over or 1+ strikeouts, it was a lock every single night. I think he went 2 for like 35 or whatever it was in his MLB career so far to start. He respects the under like nobody ever has, in my opinion. So thank you very much, Jackson Holliday. Your services were very, very warranted. And I appreciate what you did for the community there. And then we're going to round it out with one last player here, and that is going to be Austin Riley. Got to put him in the C category. Austin Riley is also off to a pretty poor start this year from what I expected, especially when it comes to total bases or the long ball. I've had a few times where I've taken him on total bases or hits, runs, and RBIs, and sometimes he's come through, but overall, I think for the duration of the season, I've expected a lot more out of a lot of the different Braves on the team. So for me, I got to put him down in the C tier, unfortunately. But yeah, that is just what it is for him so far this season. And hopefully he bounces back because Austin Riley is a fun player to watch. And I like a third baseman like him, that style of, old school, really big dude, hits the ball a million miles. So hopefully he turns it up. But yeah, that is going to go ahead and that is going to conclude the tier list for who respects coin and who doesn't. Let me know who you disagree with and who you agree with, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.